Okay, so following on from our previous lesson, we are going to be delving a little bit more in depth into cartoon studies. More specifically, in this lesson, we're going to be looking at irony in cartoons. So, just a basic definition, irony is the difference between the ways things are and the way things should be, or the way things are expected to be. Looking at sort of humor, comic irony is the literary technique or rhetorical device in which irony creates a humorous effect. So, most cartoonists will often use irony to express their opinion on an issue, which is why we often see irony in political cartoons. When you look at a cartoon, we need to see if we can find any irony in the situation. So, if we can, what point is the irony intended to emphasize, and does the irony help the cartoon express his or her opinion more effectively? We need to look at why cartoonists would use irony. So, generally, it's there because it inverts our expectations. It can create the unexpected twist at the end of a joke or a story that gets us laughing or crying. Generally, sort of with political cartoons, the content is rather serious. So, verbal irony tends to be funny, situational irony can be funny or tragic, and dramatic irony is often tragic. The first of these three, we're going to look at dramatic irony. This occurs when the audience knows a key piece of information that a character in a play, movie, or novel does not. This is the type of irony that makes us yell, "Don't go in there," during a scary movie. So, for future reference, dramatic irony is huge in Shakespeare's tragedies. So, in Romeo and Juliet, for example, at the end, the pivotal scene of the suicide, the audience knows that Juliet is not really dead. And this creates sort of a tumult in the audience, knowing that she's not dead and seeing Romeo drink the poison as sort of a wasted gesture. Situational irony occurs when the actual result of a situation is totally different from what you'd expect the result to be. Sitcoms will often use situational irony. So, for example, a family would spend a lot of time and money planning an elaborate surprise birthday party for their mother to show her how much they care. But it turns out her birthday's next month and none of them knew the correct date. So, this is kind of something when I think of situational irony, the first thing that comes to mind is Modern Family. So, everything that happens in every episode of Modern Family is pretty much just a massive use of situational irony. Verbal irony occurs when a speaker's intention is the opposite of what he or she is saying. So, for example, a character would step out into a hurricane and say, "What nice weather we're having." This is the one that often is sort of confused. So, many people will consider sarcasm a form of verbal irony. So, in an assessment or an exam, you might be asked what is being used. And this is the one that the line sort of blurs between sarcasm and verbal irony. So I'm just going to run through. We've got 9 examples here. I'm going to run through them and give you a chance to just sort of have a look. At the end of the presentation, there are 4 questions you have to keep in mind. So the first one is, what kind of irony is being used in the cartoon? Is it verbal, is it dramatic, or is it situational? You're going to have to explain your answer. You are going to have to tell us what the target audience is. So who do you think this cartoon is sort of aimed at? And then lastly, what message do you think the cartoonist is trying to get across? So what is the aim of the cartoon? I want you to just keep that in mind while we have a look. I'll sort of basically explain in case there's any confusion. So in this cartoon, we have a man struggling to open a container made of plastic, and that container contains a plastic cutter. In this cartoon, we have a man who's petting his dog rather lovingly on World Animal Day, and on the table in front of him is a pig. Here we have Donald Trump picketing outside Amazon offices, complaining that Amazon should pay more taxes. Also, guys, often cartoons you will get in assessments or exams, things you will see in class, requires a fair amount of background or general knowledge. So in order to sort of understand this cartoon, you should know, for example, that Amazon has been, especially in America, in some hot water lately because of the way they treat their staff and the fact that they pay very little taxes. So this is something you would kind of have to know in order to properly analyze this cartoon. Here we have some kids on iPads and phones. Behind them is an empty playground and a sign saying children playing. In number 5 here, we have sort of rather relevant right now. Again, many of you shouldn't have any trouble with this, considering what's going on in the world right now. We have a politician sort of rather reluctantly being taken into a hospital. Here we have some men discussing what it is they think that women want. We've got a cupboard with some monsters and a teenager. We have a man on strike. You should pay sort of particular attention here to what is being said, as well as, so again, this is a good example of looking at text and looking at sort of context, what is going on in the background. And then lastly, we have the Statue of Liberty. Again, generally the first thing immigrants see when entering America, and she stands for freedom. She stands for taking in those that need help. She's holding a clipboard and a bottle. Again, you should look at the whole. She's also wearing some gloves and a mask, also probably relevant right now. But you should have some kind of understanding of sort of Donald Trump's policies on what he likes to term illegal immigrants. Okay, so here are our 4 questions. Firstly, for each of these cartoons, we want you to identify the type of irony. So again, is it situational, verbal, or dramatic? Secondly, explain your reasoning for the above question. And what we mean by that question is, why do you say it's situational? So your explanation should have something to do with the definition or some link with the definition. Thirdly, who do you think is the target market for this cartoon? Now, when we look at target market, we generally look at 3 things. We look at economic status, we look at gender, and we look at age. So, for example, you would say that a cartoon is aimed at a middle-aged, financially stable male. So you again are taking in gender, economic status, and age. Then number 4, what point is the cartoonist trying to make? So is it a political point? Are they trying to educate us on sort of economic decisions a country is making? That kind of thing. Is it a social commentary on what is going on around us right now? Okay, so again, you're going to look at each of the cartoons. There are 9 of them, and answer these 4 questions for each of the cartoons.